The AP preseason poll is now officially out for college football, and your NC State Wolfpack are beginning the 2024 season ranked.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Sports have stopped sporting the way we want them to, but this summer, that's where FanDuel steps in. FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com in order to get started. Happy Tuesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, last week we talked about the preseason coaches poll. This week we're talking about the preseason AP poll. Now, of course, the preseason AP poll is the official ranking poll system that will be used once the college football season begins. And NC State clocks in at number 24 to start off this season. Perhaps 24 is becoming a lucky number for NC State. Perhaps it is, in fact, Year of the Wolf. But NC State football will be ranked once they put the ball down here in just 2.5 weeks.
This shouldn't come as a surprise based on how much hype is around this team and what the expectations are for this team. This is the first time in quite some time that's like, hey, if 9 wins are all you get, people are going to be disappointed. Barring something severe happening, 9 wins will have people upset and up in arms about how the season has gone. And so that makes a lot of sense in terms of this team being ranked, because if you look around the Power Four, how many teams is it double-digit wins is essential that are unranked? Not many. You're going to struggle to find teams that are in the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, that you would say the expectation is for you to win double-digit games. The expectation nationally, regionally, everything in between is for you to win double-digit games, but somehow we don't believe that you're one of the best 25 teams in the nation. Those two statements don't really jive together. So it's good to see the Pack getting their respect.
Yeah, and you're totally right. This is something that all of us have expected to see, because the talent, the offseason moves, everything leading into this season, even the easy schedule may factor into a decision like this one. But this team is simply too good on paper to be left out of the preseason top 25. I did take notice that this is actually the second time under Dave Doeren's tenure that NC State has been ranked entering the season. The last time this occurred was, of course, in 2022, where they began the year at number 13. So just twice this has happened under Dave Doeren, and both of these are in the last 3 seasons. If that also doesn't show you that this program is continuing on the upswing, proof in the pudding. The sentiment around preseason rankings is oftentimes it's based on brand, because a lot of times no one really knows what people have until they kick this thing off here at the end of August. So that's why you routinely see teams like Miami. It used to be the Dirty Foot Club before they've recently fallen apart. And people get so up in arms saying, why are these bigger brands in the top 25 when we know they're not going to be any good at football? There's your answer. It's because they're nationally recognizable and much easier to throw into a preseason list than it is once the season actually begins. But for NC State to find themselves in this top 25, it's very significant, because not only is it showing you that the media is paying attention to what NC State is trying to do this year, but the rest of the country is quickly going to be taking notice of NC State and the talent that they have brought in for this 2024 season.
The reality is, beyond the talent that this team has brought in, you talk about brand and all that good stuff, there is now starting to be an established NC State brand in terms of football. I know a lot of people don't want to believe it, but being ranked to start the year off 2 out of the last 3 years, you're starting to establish a brand. You're starting to have folks nationally look at you and expect things from you in football. I know this is new. I know this is an unfamiliar feeling, but it's where the program is now. And here's what I will say more than anything else. Brands can change overnight. Or not overnight. Let me not say that. The old phrase is it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. Think about how long this process has been building with Doeren and this team. The tides can change virtually overnight, what feels like overnight, because if you go back, we're talking about Clemson now as we know them. right? And people said, well, if Clemson had NC State's offensive weapons, they'd probably be a top 10 team. Clemson has shown and took the time that it was not like this for Clemson. They were not known as a team that was perennially ranked in the top 10, top 15, to where somebody's looking up and saying, wait, are they outside the top 10 this year? Man, this is a down year for them. They were not there. Winning brought them there. Winning brought them to the point where the expectation was, hey, this is what they're going to do, and this is how they're going to do it going forward. So Doran can definitely pull the same thing off here, where, again, winning becomes the expectation. You go out and fulfill the expectation. Now, all of a sudden, the level setting for your team changes in terms of what it would have looked like otherwise.
Another really good example I noticed, I think Alabama preseason number 5 in this list, and that's actually their lowest preseason ranking since 2009. That's absurd to say out loud, but that illustrates what Kent is talking about. Even though that Nick Saban has now stepped away and they've hired Kalen DeBoer, who is an excellent football coach, I still think that team's going to be very good. But that brand is so nationally respected. They're still a top 5 team, despite what they lost in the portal, what they lost as a head coach. Everyone knows what football season means to Alabama Crimson Tide, and they're going to find themselves every year somewhere in that top 5. It's not top 5. It'll definitely be top 10, but I thought that was fascinating. Their lowest ranking, which is 5 since 2009. Now, Kenton, NC State does clock in at number 24. I've seen a lot of interesting discourse. Some people think it's too low. Some people think it's right on the money. Some people don't want to be ranked at all. Where do you fall on that scale?
You know, this is going to be a little disingenuous for me, and I'm going to admit that right now, because anybody who knows me knows I don't believe in rankings before about week 4. I don't believe in them. I think that they're pointless. I think that you're literally saying who you think will be the best, not who you have seen, not who has put the ball down and showed you they were the best. However, with that in mind, if I had to say, do you think the Wolfpack are the 24th best team in the nation, worse than 24th best, better than 24th best? I would say this is about right. They're right in the ballpark of where I think this team would be. There is so much still to be seen with so many teams, but I'll tell you this. NC State now faces the problem. We know about the talent, and everybody knows, I think, the word of all the guys they bought in. Here's the thing. Here's the problem. Here's the drawback. The reality is, I talk a lot about Miami and the fact that they need to establish some continuity and some chemistry. This team just bought in so many guys. Even though NC State has a very established way of NC State doing things, there still is that question of, is there the push and pull? Is there the tugging? Is everybody rowing the boat in the same direction, in essence? Which is, I would believe that's not going to be a problem, but you can't rule it out. So I'd say that this is about right.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you. I think 24 is realistically right on the money. And I certainly get the sentiment that it feels too low, because there is so much talent on this team. You could certainly buy them being as high as, I'd go like 19 or 20. I would think that's reasonable, but 24 is definitely not so high that you start to like tense up a little bit. Like in 2022, we were preseason number 13. It's like, oh boy, we've never been in these type of waters before. I don't know what to expect. 24 feels about right to start this season. You don't get way too anxious, but you also understand this is one of the 25 best college football teams in the country. They are, or at least we believe them to be at this point in time. So I'm perfectly content with 24. And there's always the saying every single year, if you're focused on winning ball games, the rest will take care of itself. It really doesn't matter where you're ranked on August 13th. If you get to November 28th and you're 10-2 or you're 11-1, then you have accomplished what you set out to do. Everything that's talked about in August in terms of preseason rankings, it doesn't matter. It's mice nuts. It means nothing. However, just from a branding standpoint and a national recognition standpoint, it is good and accurate to see NC State inside this top 25 to kick off this season.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it's completely valueless, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, for what this team's goals are, it doesn't hurt, doesn't help. It just is what it is.
Coming up next, we're getting into the wealth of Pac football players and preseason watch lists. Are these the most preseason watch lists we've ever seen for a team with NC State? More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor of the day is FanDuel. Look, we all love sports, and we can't wait, especially for college football to return. But until then, FanDuel will help us keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open up the app and dream up any bets anytime we're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. And hammer NC State over 8.5 wins. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, enjoy the Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics. This includes conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and so much more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Middle portion of our Tuesday show. Wanted to spend some time talking about the amount of preseason watch lists that we've had players flood all over Twitter over the course of these last couple weeks. I have quite an extensive list, and then we're going to discuss some of the most surprising and then maybe some that we feel like a player could actually have a real shot at winning. So bear with me here. Grayson McCall, he's been nominated preseason for the Maxwell Award, which is the best player in college football, the Davey O'Brien, which is the best quarterback, Walter Camp Player of the Year, and the Comeback Player of the Year. Our center, Zeke Correll, is on the preseason watch list for the Outland Trophy, which is the best interior lineman, and the Remington Trophy, which is the best center in college football. Cornerback Aiden White is on the watch list for the Jim Thorpe Award, which is the best defensive back in the country, and he was also notably preseason All-ACC. Davin Vann has found himself on the Chuck Bednarik Award watch list. That is the Defensive Player of the Year, which is what Peyton Wilson won this last season. Sophomore wide receiver Casey Concepcion has been on the Bolitnikoff watch list, which is the top wide receiver in the country. KC with Aiden White was also preseason All-ACC. Running back Jordan Waters is on the Doak Walker list, which is the top running back in the country. Brandon Cleveland is on the Werfel Trophy watch list, which is a community service award. And lastly, Justin Jolie is on the preseason John Mackey Award watch list, which is the most outstanding tight end in the country. Ooh, that was a lot to read through, but the point being is we have a lot of players being watched for a lot of different awards. It feels like, Kenton, this is more than we've had possibly in any preseason team.
Oh, absolutely. This feels like it'll be the most, but in the word to quote a Davidson graduate, I'm Steph Curry. I'm sleeping. You know why I'm sleeping? Because we had the ACC preseason player of the year, and it didn't amount to much offensively that year, right? True. And granted, he got hurt and all that good stuff, but I honestly don't give a rat's behind about the preseason rankings, about the watch list, I want to know who's a finalist. That's what I want to know. Right. I don't care. I don't even care if you win the award. Did you go? Were you a finalist? Did you play so well that they say, you know what? There was only one or two guys in the nation I could think of played your position the way that you do. There was only one or two guys that did whatever it is that you do in the way that you do it. Outside of the Community Service Award, each and every one of those awards, if you're a finalist for it, you have without a doubt been not just a guy who comes along and makes a play when he can. You have dominated. So it's nice. Don't get me wrong. It goes into building that national brand. It goes into telling recruits, hey, you come here, we'll get you an award, X, Y, Z, all that good stuff. But you know what goes even further than that? Winning football games, winning these awards outright. That is the biggest thing to me. Yes, it's nice to have all these guys pop up. I'm not going to lie and say it's not. It's very nice. It'd be nicer to have these guys walk away with some hardware, to have guys walking away with a Walter Camp Award, a Bednarik Award, a Butkus Award, a Thorpe Award, whatever the case may be. It's always better to be in the running late than it is to be in the running early. Watch lists are good. Finalists and award winners are great.
Looking directly back at Peyton Wilson this last year, I'm sure if you go back and look through all of our episodes, we talked about him being on preseason watch lists. And the sentiment was same way back last summer. The preseason watch lists, they're nice because you're getting recognition for the player that you are and the season that you might have. But then fast forward to the end of that year when Peyton Wilson was walking away with multiple trophies, it's because of the season that he put on tape, what he put on film and filled out the stat sheet. That is what truly matters. So I'm certainly with you on that point. However, having 8 different players nominated for one or multiple watch lists kind of tied into what we were just talking about with the preseason ranking that means everybody's really paying attention to NC State here in 2024. They're looking into what we have on offense, what we brought into the transfer portal, the roles that they're going to play on this team, like a Zeke Correll or a Justin Jolie. Lots of eyes are really quickly turning on to NC State before we kick this thing off here. And sure, that maybe builds up more anxiety or more nervousness about following through with that. But I really feel maybe more than ever before that this season is ready to meet those preseason expectations.
Yeah, and in terms of those expectations, my mother always used to tell me, son, it's nothing worse in the world to be than a man that nobody expects anything from. Because if you are the type of guy nobody expects anything from, it is because you have repetitively let people down to a point that they can no longer believe in you. I know that many Wolfpack fans are listening to this saying, I've heard this before. I've heard this song and dance before. I've heard this rigmarole before. Let me tell you something. You have to believe in your hearts. That team has to believe in their hearts. We are different. This is not same old State. No matter what, we're going to find a way to lose games to teams we shouldn't. No matter what, we're going to let one loss that was close turn into 3-4. No matter what, we're going to find ways to ruin our own party. This is not that State. This is a different team. None of those old guys are walking through that door. Good, bad, and different. None of them are walking through that door. So it's up to these young men to make it happen with the best of their abilities, to the best of their abilities throughout this season, and let the chips fall where they may. But as fans, we cannot believe, or we cannot start saying, oh, I don't want to have any expectations for this team. They only perform well when there's no expectation. Well, guess what? If you want a team that is perpetually good, they'll have to perform with expectations at some time, Buki. That's just how it works out. I'm sorry to tell you. I know it's not comfortable. I know it's not fun to hear, but that is the reality. I get pissed off every time I hear that my high school didn't at least make the state semifinals, at least. Before I got there, we never won a state championship. It is because the bar was raised. If I'm believing in these guys, if I'm believing in this team, if I'm believing in Doran to raise the bar, then I need to raise my expectations with that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And something we've seen with NC State Wolfpack fans, both for football and basketball, maybe even sometimes with baseball, there has been a long list of whining and a long list of, well, I don't think we're ready for this. Or when we are ranked, it's like, oh boy, now we're going to play bad. There's been a lot of that over the course of the last probably decade plus. And what Kenton was talking about there is a great point. If NC State is ever going to actually compete for a national championship in any sport, the expectations are going to be way up as well. They're going to have to be able to deal with those expectations, both in the preseason or in the middle of the season, whenever it may be. The pressure is going to have to be dealt with one way or another. So for NC State to be looked at, just for example, this season, preseason, they're number 24. For people saying, well, I think they're just going to perform way better if they're not looked at all, if they're not ranked at all. Think about saying that out loud, and then think about the roster that we've brought in this year. There's so much talent. There's more expectations in terms of what the team has set as goals than maybe ever before. They want to win, not just get there, but win an ACC championship. And now with the expanded college football playoff, there's a realistic shot they're one of the final 12 teams standing when December rolls around. To get to that point, you have to not only believe in yourself, but believe in your program that you are ready for moments like that. And that's more than just the football players. That's more than just the coaches. Believe it or not, that is also largely involved with the fan base as well. It takes more than what happens on the field. Everyone has to buy in. And sure, you're saying, well, the fans don't really have much to do with it. Believe it or not, they have a lot more to do with it than you may think. The expectations and the outside noise, although teams like to say, tune it all out, they shut it all out, it gets through. It absolutely does. One way or another, it gets through. And for players to feel that pressure, but then rise above and beat that pressure and get to that finish line, that's where NC State wants to get. So don't be shying away from preseason rankings and, oh boy, I don't know if we're ready for the moment. You have to believe that you are ready for the moment, that this team is built for this type of moment. And all these players landing on these preseason watch lists, that highlights that the rest of the country in the media is saying, okay, NC State has built quite an impressive roster here. They might be actually on to something. Let's see what they do here in a couple weeks once this kicks off. That's what all of these watch lists mean when you really look in a little bit deeper. NC State's on the right track with having this many players in the running for one or even multiple awards. It's a really good thing. But yes, at the end of the day, there has to be that program-wide belief that you can accomplish all those goals and then reach that bigger goal at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. That's what it is. That belief has to change. The momentum of this team, it has to roll. We got to believe in this team. We got to stay in the fight with this team regardless of what happens, because the playoff being expanded to 12, it makes it a whole new world from what we're used to. It makes it a whole new world from what we're used to seeing. So, one loss doesn't mean that you're out. It's no way. Doesn't mean that at all. And if this team is to run the table, again, how embarrassing would it be to have a primetime game and have folks leaving at halftime during that situation? You know what I mean? Like it's so again, players being on these watch lists, it's great. It says that the national perception around the team is changing, but I don't put too much stock into it. I put more stock into this team needs to believe in themselves at a high level, and the fans and media need to believe in them as well. If you are, pro pack, and if you are covering the pack, if you believe, you've got to believe. You've got to be there. You've got to know that these guys can get it done at the highest level.
Coming up next, we're going to round out our Tuesday episode with a whole lot of nothing or a whole lot of something after a quick word from our sponsors. Second sponsor of the day is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships. But it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, and LED headlights, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. That's because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Last couple minutes of our Tuesday show. Now time for a whole lot of nothing or a whole lot of something. 3 topics. We'll tell you exactly where we stand on them. First one here. Bruce Feldman every preseason puts out a freak list, some of the most physically imposing players that he projects to have a really good season. Defensive end Davin Vann ranks number 6 on the Feldman freak list. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
I'll say a whole lot of nothing, because we've had guys end up on this list before. It's nice to have players recognized in this way, but a lot like the preseason watch list thing, I don't really make too much of it. It is what it is, in my opinion. I'll
go a whole lot of something, because I think a lot of people forget how good and impactful Davin Vann truly is. I don't think a lot of times in the 3-3-5, the front three don't really get enough credit or enough love about how much disruption they truly cause, because the linebackers are the key function of that type of defense. Davin Vann is a really, really good defensive end. And and having only a front three, he finds ways to get to the quarterback more often than you may project that someone would, being a man down from the traditional 4-man front. Davin Vann's a leader of this defense. He's going to be a captain of this defense, and he is a physical freak. Seeing him at ACC kickoff and seeing everything that he's put on film these last couple of years, Davin Vann is more than likely in line for a really solid season here to finish out his college career. So for this one, I'll go a whole lot of something. Second one here, there seems to be a lot more positive buzz surrounding the secondary than the wide receivers in fall camp. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
Whole lot of something, because the wide receivers were the group to watch, and they were the group that made all these stellar additions in the offseason. And yet, here we are talking about that old secondary again. Grayson and I said a couple years ago that may have been the best DB class that we have seen come through NC State. And those guys are panning out. They're ahead of schedule, if you ask me, because this is their, second year on campus now? And, they are being everything that they were taught to be, plus some. I love to see it. I'm very excited to hear a lot about these corners, because I don't think it's a lack of talent by the wide receivers. I don't think that it's that they're struggling to get it going or anything like that. By all accounts, everything that I've heard is, in this camp that we have here, if you're going to make a play, you have to make a play. What does that mean? It's not a lot of guys running open. It's not a lot of uncontested big plays and all that. If you're going to make a play this year, you've got to truly make a play, which to me, if you create that environment in college, even at the Power 4 level, you're going to be successful more often than not. If you make people do it right or damn near perfect every time defensively, that's all you can do. And guess what? Some nights a team may have a night where they go perfect and everything just goes. But for the most part, if you make teams be perfect, you'll be just fine. If you make teams show up as their best selves to score on you, you'll be just fine, which I believe is the case here.
I'm going to go a whole lot of something with a slightly different angle. This excites me for the secondary because, like Kenton was talking about, there's so much anticipation for what we'd get out of the wide receiving room, being that it was completely revamped coming into this offseason. The secondary is bringing the most buzz, I guess you could say, out of these two groups in fall camp. That makes me feel like the secondary is just playing that much better than perhaps the wide receivers are. We all know what Aiden White is. We've talked at lengths about what we think that Brandon Cisse could be. And I've heard Cisse is putting together an extremely strong fall camp. That is exactly what you need to be hearing at this point of August. If Cisse pans out and he is as strong or maybe even competitively as strong to Aiden White, how can you expect opposing offenses to find much success on us through the air? Because then you also got to factor in Jahad Carter. He was previously an all-ACC safety. DK Kaufman comes over from Auburn. He's got that SEC experience, SEC speed, SEC talent. I think he's going to be very key in that secondary. Of course, you retain Bishop Fitzgerald from last year. You have some of the younger DBs coming up through the ranks to provide an impact. Corey Coley comes over from Maryland. T-Mac Cooley comes over from Maryland. The secondary is not only deep, but they're extremely talented. That's cause for a lot of excitement. Now, the wide receivers are maybe a little bit of a separate category to begin conversations about. We'll discuss that a little bit further here in just a second, but I'm not exactly worried about the wide receivers. I'm more so excited about the play of the secondary. Whole lot of something for me. And then last one here, we spoke about him yesterday. Freshman wide receiver Keenan Jackson has really been the only consistent young wide receiver that's been stirring up some buzz. Does this concern you? Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
Not really, because as good as the freshman wide receivers are supposed to be, I mean, I'm never shocked if freshmen aren't showing up and showing out day one. It's a whole new ball game. It's an entirely different game from that which you saw as a high schooler. So, wide receiver is one of those positions that is generally tough to translate over, next year's success for anyway, which is why KC was such a surprise to many, being as good as he was as soon as he was. But I'd say a whole lot of nothing because, the rest of these freshmen, they have time to develop, and we still haven't seen how these guys react to the lights being the brightest. Some guys rise to the occasion and get better. Some guys kind of fall off and fade. So we'll see how everything plays off. But I'll say a whole lot of nothing, not because these guys aren't good or I don't expect them to be good. I don't expect much right away from guys. I just don't.
It's a whole lot of nothing for me as well, because I find it fascinating what KC Concepcion has kind of done to our brain after last season. Freshman wide receivers are not supposed to really come in and light up the country in the way that KC did last year. To Kenton's point, oftentimes we don't really expect much out of freshmen because the upperclassmen are tasked with leading the way, or maybe it's a transfer guy that comes into your program. So for Keenan Jackson to kind of be only the young freshman wide receiver that's generating consistent buzz, that doesn't really concern me because I have high hopes for guys like Jonathan Paylor and Terrell Anderson, names that you may hear, I guess, further down the line, but it's not a concern that you're not hearing them as often right now. The fact that Keenan Jackson's name is coming up right now, it's kind of like an added bonus. You don't expect him to be in the lineup too much this year, but if he finds his way on the field, that's really good because it provides more depth for an already really good wide receiving room. So it's not so much a concern, more of an added bonus at this point in time. So for me, it's a whole lot of nothing. That'll do it for us here on Tuesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments down in the comment box. Tell us what you think about NC State beginning the season at preseason number 24. Too high, too low, right on the money? Let us know. Tell us what you think about the 8 different players finding themselves on preseason award watch lists and what that means for NC State moving forward. And anything else you have on your mind as well, drop that down in the comment box. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and we will see you all right back here tomorrow on Wednesday. Until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.